never thought the house on Lake Wisteria would become a battlefield. When Harold and I bought it 32 years ago, it was barely standing. The porch sagged like it was tired of holding itself up. The dock was warped, the paint peeled in long curls like sunburnt skin, and the inside smelled like mildew and old fish. But the first time I stepped onto that back deck and saw the water, still, silver, endless, I felt something in my chest settle. "This is it," I told Harold. He laughed. "It's falling apart, June." "So are we," I said. "We'll fix it together." And we did. We spent summers sanding floors, arguing over paint colors, and eating takeout on overturned buckets. We planted hydrangeas along the walkway. We carved our initials into the dock. When our son, Caleb, was 9, he jumped off that dock for the first time and came up sputtering, furious at the cold. Now, Caleb is 38, married, and apparently convinced that the house no longer belongs to me. It started on a Sunday afternoon in late May. The sky was blue, the lake glassy. I had just made iced tea when Caleb and his wife Melissa pulled into the gravel driveway in their white SUV. Melissa stepped out first. She always does. She had on oversized sunglasses, a linen jumpsuit that probably cost more than my first car, and that tight smile she uses when she's pretending to be pleasant. "Hi, Mom," Caleb said, kissing my cheek. He smelled like expensive cologne and nerves. Melissa air-kissed near my face. "June." I hate when she calls me June. Not Mom, not Mrs. Whitaker, just June, like I'm her Pilates instructor. We sat on the deck. The water lapped softly against the dock. I remember thinking how peaceful it was. That was before she opened her mouth. "So," Melissa said, crossing her legs, "we need to talk about the lake house." I felt my spine straighten. "What about it?" She glanced at Caleb. He looked at his hands. "We've been thinking," she continued smoothly, "that it makes more sense for us to have it now." "Have it?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "You live alone, it's a lot of upkeep, and with the market the way it is, this property is a gold mine. If we take ownership, we can renovate, maybe even turn it into a short-term rental when we're not using it." I stared at her. "I'm not selling." "Oh, no," she said quickly. "Not selling, transferring." The word felt like a slap. Caleb finally spoke. "Mom, it would stay in the family." "It is in the family," I said quietly. Melissa's smile tightened. "You know what I mean." I did know what she meant. I meant under her control. I took a slow sip of tea. "Why would I transfer it?" She leaned forward. "Because it's the smart move. You're 65. Eventually, it'll come to Caleb anyway. Why wait?" "Because I'm not dead." But I didn't say that. Instead, I looked at my son. "Is this what you want?" He hesitated. That hesitation broke something inside me. "I just think," he said carefully, "it would simplify things later." Simplify, as if my life were paperwork waiting to be processed. I'm not ready to give it up. "Melissa," exhaled dramatically, "June, we're not asking you to give it up emotionally. You can still visit." "Visit? My own home?" "I'm not transferring it," I repeated. The air shifted. The softness disappeared. Melissa's voice cooled. "Then you're being selfish." The word echoed across the water. "Selfish? For keeping the house I paid for? The house I rebuilt? The house where my husband's ashes are scattered at the edge of the trees?" Caleb stood. "Let's not do this." "No," Melissa said sharply. "Let's, because this affects our future." I felt heat rising in my chest. "Your future doesn't require my house. You're sitting on an asset that could set us up. Do you know how much this property is worth now?" "Yes," I said evenly. "More than you think." She blinked. I watched her carefully. "And I also know exactly whose name is on the deed." Her jaw flexed. Caleb rubbed his forehead. "Mom, I'm done with this conversation," I said. They left 30 minutes later. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from a law firm in Chicago. My hands trembled as I opened it at the kitchen table. It was a family asset review request, initiated by Caleb Whitaker. I read it twice before the words made sense. They were questioning my capacity for long-term property management decisions. Capacity? My vision blurred. They were implying I wasn't mentally fit to handle my own property. I felt cold. Then I felt something else. Anger. I drove to town that same afternoon and sat across from Martin Keller, the attorney Harold and I used for decades. He adjusted his glasses as he read the letter. "Well," he said slowly, "this is aggressive." "Can they do this?" I asked. "They can request evaluation. They'd need evidence." I laughed, but it sounded broken. "Evidence that I'm what? Senile?" He looked at me kindly. "Have you given them any reason?" "No." "Then this is intimidation." I stared at the wall behind him. "Martin," I said quietly, "what do I do?" He folded his hands. "We respond, and we prepare." Prepare for what? For the possibility that this isn't just about the house. That night, I sat on the dock alone. The sun bled orange into the lake. I could almost hear Harold beside me. "You always said Caleb was soft," I whispered to the water, "but I never thought—" My phone buzzed. Melissa. I let it ring once, twice, then I answered. "Hello?" Her voice was calm, too calm. "June, we didn't want to escalate this. You already escalated it. You forced our hand. By keeping my property? I think you're not thinking long term, and frankly, Caleb is worried about you." "Is he?" My voice trembled. "Yes, he's noticed changes." "What changes?" "Aggression, paranoia." I laughed bitterly. "Paranoia? You think we're attacking you." "I am." A pause. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "We have documentation." "What documentation?" "Conversations, incidents, witnesses." My mind raced. "What incidents? What witnesses?" "I don't know what game you're playing," I said. "It's not a game," she replied. "It's protection." "For who?" "For our family." "I am your family." Another pause. Then she said softly, "Not if you refuse to act like it." She hung up. I sat there for a long time after the call ended. The lake was dark now. The trees whispered in the wind. Documentation, incidents, witnesses. And then I remembered something. 3 months ago, at Easter dinner, Melissa had been filming casually with her phone. She said it was for social media. At one point, we argued about politics. I'd raised my voice. Caleb had looked embarrassed. Melissa had smiled slightly. What if they were building something? My chest tightened. The next morning, I went through my filing cabinet. Harold had always been meticulous. Every document, every receipt. And then I found it. A trust. One we'd created quietly 10 years ago. Irrevocable, with very specific clauses about the lake house. Clauses Caleb had never asked about. Clauses Melissa definitely didn't know existed. I smiled for the first time in days. Because if they wanted evidence, I had some too, and I wasn't the fragile old woman they thought I was. Not even close. But I didn't call them. Not yet. I waited. Because sometimes the most powerful move isn't shouting, it's letting them believe they're winning. And Melissa had no idea what Harold and I put in place the year before he died. No idea at all. And the moment she realizes, that's when this really begins. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the guest room, the room Caleb used to call his captain's quarters when he was 10, and stared at the ceiling fan turning slow circles in the dark. Every sound felt louder. The refrigerator humming, the dock creaking as the water shifted. Even the wind brushing against the siding felt like a warning. They have documentation. The words wouldn't leave me alone. By morning, I wasn't scared anymore. I was focused. I drove back into town and met Martin again. I brought the trust document with me this time, the original copy Harold and I had signed in his office a decade ago. Martin adjusted his glasses again, scanning the pages. "Well," he murmured, "this changes things." I thought so. He leaned back. "You never told Caleb about this?" "No, Harold didn't want him burdened with it." Martin gave me a look. "Burdened isn't the word I'd use." The trust was simple on the surface. The lake house was placed into an irrevocable family preservation trust. It could not be sold, transferred, or leveraged as collateral. Not by me, not by Caleb, not by anyone. And here was the part that mattered most. If any direct heir attempted legal action to challenge my capacity or force transfer of the property during my lifetime, their beneficiary status would be suspended indefinitely. Suspended, meaning Caleb would lose access entirely. The house would instead pass to a conservation foundation upon my death. I remember Harold's voice the day we signed it. "Just in case," he'd said. "Just in case what?" I asked. "Just in case love turns into entitlement." At the time, I thought he was being dramatic. Now I realized he'd been careful. Martin looked at me. "If they push this in court and we present the trust, Caleb effectively disinherits himself." I swallowed. "I don't want to destroy my son." "You're not destroying him," Martin said evenly. "You're protecting yourself. There's a difference." I nodded slowly. "Let them make their move," he continued. "If they file for competency review, we respond formally, but we don't reveal the trust unless necessary." "Why not?" I asked. "Because right now, they think the house is available." Available, like it's a clearance item. "Let them show their hand," he said. So I did. 3 weeks passed quietly. Too quietly. Caleb stopped calling, Melissa stopped texting, and then I got served. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was watering the hydrangeas when a man in a gray suit walked up the driveway holding a clipboard. "June Whitaker?" "Yes." "You've been served." Just like that. Petition for formal mental competency evaluation. Filed by Caleb Whitaker. I stared at my son's name in bold print. My hands didn't shake this time. I signed. "Have a good day, ma'am," the man said politely. I almost laughed at that. A good day. I went inside and called Martin. "They filed," I said. "I expected they would," he replied calmly. "We'll schedule your independent evaluation first." Independent? Yes, we don't let them control the narrative. 2 days later, I sat in a psychologist's office answering questions about dates, current events, finances, and memory recall. "What year is it?" 2026. "Who is the current president?" I answered. "Do you manage your own finances?" "Yes." "Have you experienced confusion recently?" "Only about why my son thinks I'm incompetent." The doctor smiled faintly. 3 hours later, she shook my hand. "You are cognitively sound, Mrs. Whitaker." "I know." When Martin received the report, he sounded satisfied. "They don't have a case," he said. "Then why am I still uneasy?" "Because this was never about your mental health." He was right. It was about pressure. And pressure can crack people, but not me. A week before the preliminary hearing, Caleb finally showed up at the house alone. I saw his truck pull in and felt something twist in my chest. He looked older, tired. "Mom," he said softly. "Caleb." We stood on the porch like strangers. "I didn't want it to go this far," he began. "But it did." He ran his hair through his hair. "Melissa thinks—" "I'm not talking about Melissa," I said sharply. "I'm talking about you." He looked down. "Do you believe I'm incompetent?" Silence. "Caleb," he swallowed. "I think you're stubborn." "That's not incompetence." "No, but what?" "You're not thinking about us." There it was again. Us, as if I had stepped outside the family circle. "I have spent my entire life thinking about you," I said quietly. This house is not just property. It could help us, he insisted. We're stretched thin. The mortgage on the Chicago place is insane. Melissa's business hasn't what? He hesitated. Hasn't taken off like she said it would. There it was. Debt. This wasn't about legacy. It was about money. How much? I asked. He looked startled. What? How much are you in debt? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Caleb, I said slowly, you're trying to solve your financial problems with my home. It's not like that. It is exactly like that. He stepped closer. You don't understand the pressure we're under. I felt something inside me go very still. You think I don't know pressure? I said softly. When your father's cancer treatments drained our savings, when we almost lost this house the first year, when I worked double shifts at the hospital? His eyes flickered. You never told me that. That's because I didn't blame you for it. Silence stretched between us. Withdraw the petition, I said. He looked torn. I can't, he said finally, or you won't. He didn't answer. That was the moment I realized something hard. This wasn't just Melissa pushing him. He was choosing this. When he left, I didn't cry. I went inside. I pulled the trust document out of the drawer again, and I called Martin. Prepare it, I said. For court? Yes. You're sure? Yes. The day of the hearing, Melissa wore navy, very polished, very controlled. She didn't look at me. Caleb looked pale. Their attorney presented arguments about erratic behavior, financial vulnerability, and future security. Then Martin stood, and everything shifted. He presented the independent psychological evaluation first, clean, clear, undeniable. Then he introduced the trust. The courtroom went quiet. Melissa's head snapped up. What is that? She whispered to her attorney. Martin spoke calmly. The property in question has been part of an irrevocable preservation trust since 2016. The judge frowned. Irrevocable? Yes, Your Honor, and Clause 7 clearly states that any beneficiary who initiates legal action to challenge the grantor's competency forfeits beneficiary rights entirely. The words hung heavy. Caleb turned to Melissa slowly, her face drained of color. Their attorney flipped through the copy Martin handed over, faster and faster. This can't be— It is, Martin said evenly. The judge adjusted her glasses. So even if the court were to rule in favor of the petitioner, which the evaluation does not support, the property cannot be transferred or leveraged? Correct. And the petitioner risks losing inheritance rights entirely? Correct. The judge looked directly at Caleb. Mr. Whitaker, were you aware of this? He shook his head. Melissa's nails dug into her purse strap. The judge sighed. So, given the evaluation and the trust structure, I see no grounds to proceed. Gavel down. Case dismissed. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like detonation. Outside the courthouse, Melissa exploded. You knew? She hissed at Caleb. He stared at her, stunned. No, you said it was simple. I didn't know. She turned toward me, eyes blazing. You did this on purpose. No, I said calmly. Your husband's father did. Her mouth opened slightly. Caleb looked like the ground had disappeared beneath him. You set me up. I protected my home. She stepped closer. This isn't over. I held her gaze. It is for the court, but I knew she was right, because when someone believes they're entitled to something, they don't walk away quietly. And as Caleb stood between us, torn and shaken, I realized something chilling. This wasn't just about a lake house anymore. It was about control, and Melissa doesn't lose control gracefully. That night, back at the house, I found something that made my stomach drop. The lock on the side storage shed had been tampered with. Not broken, tested. And inside that shed, 10 financial boxes, insurance documents, original property surveys. Someone had been here, And suddenly, the court hearing felt like just the beginning.
The lock wasn't broken. That's what kept replaying in my head. It wasn't smashed or cut, it had been picked, carefully, deliberately. Whoever did it didn't want me to notice, but I did. I stood inside that little storage shed with the door half open, dust floating in the late afternoon light, staring at the metal latch. My pulse was slow, not panicked, focused. The old banker boxes were slightly shifted, not torn apart, not rummaged wildly, just examined. Someone had been looking for something specific. The original deed, the trust paperwork, or maybe something they thought would prove I was hiding assets. I walked back toward the house slowly, scanning the property, the dock, the tree line, the gravel. Tire marks, fresh, not mine. I didn't call Caleb. I didn't call Melissa. I called Martin. Install cameras, he said immediately. Today. I will. And June? Yes? Stop assuming they won't escalate. That sentence settled heavy in my chest. I hired a local security company the next morning. By evening, discreet cameras were mounted along the porch, driveway, and tree line facing the shed. I didn't tell anyone. 3 days later, I got my answer. It was 11:42 p.m. when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I was awake. I've been sleeping lightly ever since the court hearing. I opened the app. And there she was, Melissa, standing near the shed in a black hoodie, looking around like she was in some cheap crime show. My heart didn't race. It hardened. She tried the handle again. Then she crouched. I watched her hands move toward the lock. I didn't move. I watched. She worked at it for nearly 4 minutes before headlights swept across the trees. A second car. Caleb's truck. He stepped out quickly, walking toward her. Even without audio, I could read her body language. "What are you doing?" She stood up fast, gesturing toward the shed. He shook his head. They argued. I could see it in the sharp movements, the tension, the space between them. Then he did something I didn't expect. He grabbed her wrist, not violently, but firmly, and led her back to the car. They left. I sat there in the dark, staring at the empty screen. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt finished. The next morning, I called Caleb. He answered on the second ring. "Mom, I have footage," I said calmly. Silence. "I know," he replied. That surprised me. "You were there," I said. "Yes." "Were you planning to tell me?" He exhaled slowly. "I was coming today." "Why was she here, Caleb?" He didn't dodge it this time. "She thought you were hiding financial documents that would prove you manipulated the trust." I almost laughed. Manipulated how? "She thinks Dad signed it under pressure." I closed my eyes. "Your father drafted it." "I know that now." "Now. When were you going to believe that?" I asked quietly. Another pause. "Mom," he said, and his voice sounded different, less defensive, more tired. "Things aren't good. With you and her?" "Yes." I didn't say anything. "She pushed the petition," he admitted. "She pushed the lawyer. She pushed the idea that you were unstable. And you let her." I thought it made sense at the time. Because of the debt. He didn't deny it. "Her business is failing. We refinanced twice. The investors pulled out. She thought if we leveraged the lake house—" "You can't leverage what you don't own. I know that." Silence stretched between us again. "I'm filing for separation," he said finally. The words landed softly, not dramatic, not explosive, just heavy. "I told her last night," he continued, "that I won't fight you anymore, that I won't touch the house, that I was done." I walked to the window and looked out at the water. "And she?" I asked. "She said you poisoned me against her." I smiled faintly. Did I? No. For the first time in months, I believed him. "I'm coming up," he said, alone. He arrived an hour later. No SUV, no designer sunglasses, no performance. just my son. He sat at the kitchen table where he used to do homework, elbows resting on the wood Harold refinished by hand. "I'm sorry," he said. I studied his face. There were lines there now. Regret has a way of carving quickly. "Why didn't you talk to me?" I asked. He looked down. "Because I was embarrassed." Of what? Of failing. That word felt honest. Melissa made everything feel urgent, like we were drowning, like if we didn't grab something solid, we'd lose everything. And I was the solid thing, I said quietly. Yes. Not because he didn't love me, but because he thought I would bend. "I won't apologize for protecting the house," I said. "I know. And I won't remove the trust. I'm not asking you to." That was the first time I felt the shift, not in him, in me, because the fight was over. Not legally, emotionally. We sat there for a long time without speaking. Finally, he looked at me. Did Dad think this would happen? I thought about Harold standing in Martin's office signing those papers with steady hands. "Yes," I said softly. He thought love can change when money gets involved. Caleb nodded slowly. I hate that he was right. So do I. A week later, Melissa sent me one last email. No apology, just a warning. "You've won the house. Let's see what you lose next." I didn't respond. Because here's the thing. I didn't win anything. I kept what was already mine. Caleb moved into a small apartment in Chicago while the separation proceedings began. He's figuring things out, slowly. We're rebuilding too, carefully. Trust doesn't come back overnight, but sometimes boundaries make space for something healthier. Last night, he stood on the dock beside me. The sun was setting, turning the lake into liquid gold. He said, "I forgot how quiet it is here." "It's always been quiet," I replied. "You were just too loud to hear it." He smiled faintly. For the first time in months, it felt like we were standing on the same side, not against each other, not divided by paperwork, just mother and son. The cameras are still up. The trust is still locked. The house is still mine. And the water? It hasn't changed at all. It still moves the same way it did when Harold and I first stood here dreaming about a future we couldn't fully see. Now I understand something I didn't back then. Protection isn't cruelty. Silence isn't weakness. And love doesn't mean surrender. If you've ever had to stand your ground when the people closest to you thought you should step aside, if you've ever been called selfish for protecting what you built, then you understand this story. Go ahead and like this video if it hit you somewhere deep. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that boundaries are not betrayal. And subscribe if you want more stories about family, power, inheritance, and the quiet strength it takes to say no. Because sometimes the real battle isn't in court, it's at your own kitchen table. And sometimes the only evidence you need is knowing exactly who you are.